So I am here with Noelani Pantastico, who is a principal dancer with Pacific Northwest Ballet. She has been involved with Mid-Columbia Ballet for many years. She guested, she has coached MCB dancers, which we will get to in a little bit. And she's also been a guest teacher at Tri-Cities Academy of Ballet. So Noe, could you tell us about your background and your path as a dancer?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Hi, everyone. So yeah, I would say I did the brunt of my training at Central Pennsylvania Youth Ballet, and then I was very fortunate to get a job right out of school. I did a cattle call audition in New York at the age of 16, and Francia offered me an apprenticeship, and I started with Pacific Northwest Ballet in 1997 in the summer. Is that right? Yeah, 1997 was a long time ago. And then I kind of went up through the ranks. I can't remember the years I got promoted. And then in 2004, I think that was the year I got promoted to principal. And then in 2008, I needed just a little different point of view. So I joined Ballet de Monte Carlo. And in 2008, and then I was there for 7.5 years. And recently I've come back. I think it was November of what year was that? It was like a year and a half ago. I've been back in Seattle since then. Um, yeah, and that's kind of it. That's like a shortened version
Yeah, we're
of everything.
very happy to have you back in Washington State.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm happy to be back.
So we're getting ready for Mid-Columbia Ballet's spring performance, and as part of that spring performance, we are performing Swan Lake Act II. So just that segment. But Noe, could you tell us about the first time that you performed Swan Lake?
For the first time, I don't know what year that was. I think it was probably 2003. So I was a baby. I was like a little baby ballerina. I think I was probably 23 or 24 years old. And the first time you kind of do a role, you try to do it as correctly as possible, as correct as possible, excuse me. And you learn all the steps. You do what everyone says. You watch a lot of videos, and I still watch videos to kind of get different points of view. And then I had a lot of coaching the first time around. That's kind of the process that I went through that I remember, and it was quite rigorous because you're putting your body through something it's never been through before. The beautiful thing about Swan Lake is that you have a person that's kind of two characters. You're dealing with two different people. I would say when I first started doing it, I was more of an Odile. So Odette was kind of a reach for me. And I don't know what I am now. But back then, for sure, I identified more with Odile. So for second act, I remember it being quite difficult for me because I was kind of always like the jumpy girl, the short, jumpy, turny girl with a young face. So it was hard. It was not easy and not an easy feat.
So how did you get into that mindset to be Odette, this sort of foreign character to you?
Yeah, well, I think, when I look at my career path, um, like I said, Odette wasn't natural for me, but I had been, Kent and Francie had really worked with me on like my Adagio and pas de deux work. So they felt obviously that I was ready to not only do work like Odile, but also to show that I have more depth as a dancer. Um, so that I think was a path for me to do Odette. But that's not the case for a lot of dancers. Some dancers are naturally an Odette, and it's very easy for them. So it's just case by case. But for me, it was kind of the right time for me to show that to an audience. But at the same time, in the studio rehearsals, it was still a lot to grasp. And I just remember the rehearsals were just like constant. They were really they were trusting me with a lot. And then I did a lot of work on the side, a lot of studying, and I think at that point I was copying a lot of what I saw. It wasn't coming from somewhere in my heart, or it wasn't an internal thing. Because how do you portray a bird,
Yeah.
that is in love? It's a very strange story. So a lot of what I was doing was copying and not feeling necessarily yet. And that comes years down the line. The more you do it, the more you learn about yourself and your capabilities and what will show best to the audience. I don't know if that answers your question. That was kind of long-winded.
No worries. So when was the next time that you did it? How many times did you do it with?
I asked Jeff Stanton. So Jeff Stanton, who was a principal here, a famous principal here, who also guested at
many times.
Mid-Columbia Ballet. I asked him yesterday. I actually had a conversation with him about it. And I remember doing it at least 3 times, but he only remembers dancing with me twice. And I think he was my only partner. I feel like I did it 3 times. So I have to check the books. But anyway, it was 2 or 3 times. So I think that after 2000, maybe around 2003, 2004, the first time, it was probably a couple years later. Often with full lengths like that, once they kind of get them out of the closet, they tend to do them like 2 years later or 3 years later. They kind of keep them on the shelf. Yeah.
So what was it like to, besides playing 2 characters, to do a ballet like Swan Lake that is just, notoriously like exhausting? How do you not just physically prepare but mentally prepare to perform that piece?
I'm the type of person that, I'm a thinker. I'm kind of always in my head about things, and often beforehand I don't sleep very well, or even during performances I don't sleep very well. And I think it's part of it is, you prepare for weeks. It's like this mountain that you need to climb, and then when you finally get to it, you don't want to think about it anymore. So you just want to live it. And that is what I remember having to do, is like kind of forgetting everything, and just like being really in the moment and living it. Because if I thought beforehand, like, man, I have to carry a 3.5-hour ballet, or however long it is, it felt like 3.5 hours.
I think it is.
Yeah, it's something like that. I remember thinking, like, I'm not going to be able to get through. It's too much pressure. So I was really, by the time I got to 4th act, I remember just being completely spent, like not thinking that I could go on for 4th, like in tears. And then you quit.
Oh, seem to have a glitch there.
Something takes over. Oh, sorry. No, I was saying, and then you get to 4th act, and you just do it. You just, somehow your body just, because of all the rehearsals, your body knows it. So you just have to kind of throw yourself into it. And actually, that's when magic kind of happens, I think. You don't think anymore. You're just like going for it. You have nothing to lose at that point.
So you also said that you did a kind of non-traditional version. What was that like?
Yeah, so in my years away in Monte Carlo, Jean-Christophe always does story ballets, And while I was away, he created a version of Swan Lake, and he just calls it Lac. And in his version, I played the Black Swan. And the Black Swan in his version is the daughter of Rothbard, and Rothbard is actually a woman in his version.
Okay.
And then he also there's the White Swan. So the White Swan and Black Swan are two different people. So I was fortunate enough to play the Black Swan, and that was, for me, that was really great, because as a small person, you're often kind of pegged for like the cute roles, and in his version, it was a very sultry, sexy, evil character, and I got to kind of find myself in that character on stage, and I got to do it for years, and that's really a luxury. I think as dancers, we get to visit certain ballets, but then it's only for a couple weeks at a time, and then they go away, and sometimes you never see them again, and sometimes it's 3 years. But with Jean-Christophe's work and his Swan Lake in particular, we would go on tour with it, and sometimes we do Swan Lake or his Lac many times in one season. So you get to really become good at it, or become good at any role you did there, and really find yourself within the role. It was quite a beautiful experience.
How different was it to play the Black Swan in Jean-Christophe's version versus, say, playing Odile at PMB?
So Jean-Christophe's work is classically based. So there are point shoes and everything, but there are no tutus. Technically, it's still really hard, but it's not technical in the way of like 32 fouettes. It was more like a stamina thing, and you're trying to tell a story, and the variation was very tricky. It's just different, and it's a different kind of storytelling. I think in Jean-Christophe, in Jean-Christophe's works in general, the characters have more depth. And maybe if I revisited Odile now in the classical version, I would give her more depth. Now that I've kind of done another version, it's everyone's own experience, I guess. Yeah. But I remember last time I did Odile, I kind of played it as one kind of character, and maybe I would do it a little different this time. But technically speaking, they're both hard. They're both really, really hard,
So to kind of shift this back to coaching students, so in 2004, that was the last time that MCB did Swan Lake Act II, and you came down from Seattle to the Tri-Cities with Nicholas Aid, and the two of you coached the dancers. Do you remember what that experience was like? And
yeah, I did. Well, I remember being nervous because that's a lot, because it was still very new to me. So to give information to younger people, I did have information to give, but now that I think back on it, like, man, I would do such a better job now, probably. So I was probably giving a lot of information that was just given to me, which is not bad information. Yeah. But it was probably maybe a little bit more technical about épaulement, like head and neck and arms, and how to look more bird-like. But yeah, it was still fun. It was still like, sometimes when you're teaching and when you're coaching younger people, or even your colleagues, you kind of learn more about yourself and different approaches you would take the next time. So I remember that being kind of helpful. And even when I taught there too, I remember going back home and my classwork would get better.
That's nice to hear. Teaching does make you a better student, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So, so what would you say, in 2 weeks we have this performance, and actually this time we didn't have anybody come to coach the dancers from outside besides the artistic director, Deborah Rogo. So what would you say to our dancers in general, if you could? Also, knowing that our girl who will be playing Odette finds it much easier to do roles like Odile instead. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
Um, well, I mean, are these brand new swans?
They are. They have never done it before. None of them. So
Okay, and sorry, she feels better doing Odile.
things like that, yes. So this kind of the vulnerable swan is new for her. But what would you say for her and for all of our dancers, really?
Yeah, well, I'm sure Deborah has like a wealth. I know she has a wealth of knowledge, obviously. So listen to Deborah. But also, really make a point to do studying. I still do it. It helps me visualize. And then when you're going through the motions, visual. I just recently I put a video online about like visualization. A lot of football players or soccer players use it when they're thinking about making a goal. Having pictures in your mind or videos or whatever you're studying is really, really helpful, and you would surprise yourself at how much that can help. And then you guys are doing second act, so I would just make sure that you have lots of options for point shoes. I know that's kind of like a silly thing maybe to think about, but that was like very, very crucial for me when I was starting out, because obviously it's a lot of point work, it's a lot of bourrées, and you don't want little things like that to bother your performance. Yeah, I don't really know much more to say rather than like once the coaching is done and once you're ready to go on stage, then like I said, don't overthink it too much. Just try to live it and enjoy it and be in the story. Don't. I think when I was younger, I thought so much of technique. But then when you get on stage, it's not about the technique. It is about the technique, but it's also a lot about the performance and what your intent is in your heart, because that really reads to the audience, and they're going to see what's in your heart, not only your little feet.
Well, thank you so much for interviewing and speaking to us. We really appreciate it. And best of luck with the rest of the season.
Thank you. You have to give a big, big hug and kiss to Deborah and Gay, and of course the crew and your dad. And thanks for having me today. I had a nice time.
Thank you so much, Noe.
Yeah, nice to see you, hon.
Nice to see you.